Hey guys, welcome back. We had a lot of House districts that had their primaries yesterday, Super Tuesday. These kind of get pushed into the background when you have a presidential primary going on. But winning the presidency is just one piece of the puzzle. If you actually want to pass legislation, you need to win the House and the Senate. And to do that, you have to have success in these competitive House districts, as well as those competitive Senate matchups. Actually, really good news coming out today for the Democrats and their chances at possibly going on and claiming the Senate with the Democratic Governor Steve Bullock. It looks like he's potentially going to go on and run in that Senate matchup, which opens the door for the Democrats possibly picking up a Senate seat there in Montana. So that one is worth keeping an eye on. But I wanted to start here with a couple of congressional races that you guys are probably most interested in. And then after that, going to go through and take a look at the rest of these districts and focusing on those competitive races to see how those primaries played out. So starting out here in the 28th Congressional District, you had the Progressive Movement, the Justice Democrats, getting behind Jessica Cisneros. They were hoping this was going to be kind of another Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez takes down Joe Crowley replay. It came up just short. Very competitive race. It is tough defeating an entrenched incumbent, Henry Cuellar. He's had this seat for the past 15 years, extremely close within just a few percentage points, but Cuellar, one of the most conservative Democrats representing a very safe Democratic congressional district, he goes on and continues to claim that one. And then also California's 25th congressional district. This is the one where Katie Hill stepped aside, an open Democratic seat. And this is an area that's been trending towards the Democrats, and they're likely going to be something in the way of competitive here, but it is a likely seat for the Democrats to continue to hold. The progressive running in this one, Cenk Uygur, did not have all that much in the way of success. We'll see what Uygur decides to do in his future in terms of maybe running again. I think he could have been a little bit more strategic in picking either a district that he lives in or one that he has more clout, name recognition, and leans a bit more to the progressive side. I think if he does that in the future, if he has any aspirations to get into the House of Representatives, he would have a bit more success than what we're seeing here, at least thus far in the 25th Congressional District. Now, it is worth noting that these California results, a lot more are going to continue to come in over the course of this next week with those mail-in ballots. So this is just a snapshot of largely what happened on Election Day. Again, those mail-in ballots are going to continue to be tallied up, but the Democrat here, Christy Smith, leads the way, and it looks like in this jungle primary, more than likely going to be challenged by Mike Garcia in the runoff, with the former Republican incumbent for this district, Steve Knight, looking like he's going to come up short there against Garcia. But now I want to go through and take a look at the rest of the competitive districts and see how all of those elections played out. Starting off here with North Carolina, the state actually doesn't have a ton in the way of competitive districts, but a few that I want to go through here. An open Democratic seat in the 2nd Congressional District. This is likely to continue to be in Democrats' hands. Deborah Ross going on and cleaning up in this one, getting over 100,000 votes, which is pretty impressive for a House Democratic primary there in that 2nd Congressional District. And then on the Republican side, Alan Swain running unopposed. That'll be the general election matchup. In the 6th Congressional District, a similar scenario. It's an open Democratic seat that's likely going to continue to be with the Democrats. Kathy Manning going on and winning the Democratic primary. Lee Haywood picking it up on the Republican side. And it's kind of an unfortunate scenario because you have a competitive Democratic presidential primary going on right now, but you don't have a competitive Republican primary. So it's a little bit tougher to see the enthusiasm difference on both sides because you're going to get a ton more turnout when you have a competitive presidential race. We're seeing that in the vote numbers here on the Democrat side, in contrast to on the Republican side, who they don't have nearly as much in the way of the vote total. But again, given the circumstances that are at play here, without there being a competitive Republican primary, it's just tough to have a comparison to see which side is having a bit more in the way of success with voter turnout in the primary. So it is what it is. Going to continue on here, going on to the 9th Congressional District. And a lot of you guys might remember this one. There was a lot of foul play by the Republicans in this district back in the 2018 midterms where they actually had to scrap that election result and do a redo. The Republicans were actually able to claim the victory in that redone election. Dan Bishop winning it. He is unopposed in this primary. He is the incumbent. And this one is still likely to be in Republican hands. Dan Bishop going to be challenged by Cynthia Wallace, who did decently well for herself on that Democratic side. And now we have a ton of districts to run through in the states of Texas and California. So the 2nd Congressional District in Texas is currently held by incumbent Republican Dan Crenshaw, a very well-known individual, but this is one of those districts that's kind of trending more favorable for the Democrats in the Houston suburbs, so one to potentially keep an eye on. It looks like Seema Lehavardian is going to go on and potentially win that runoff. She was just below the 50% threshold needed to not go to that runoff, but a 16 or so point lead over the second place finisher, Elisa Cardinal. The 7th Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats. They have the incumbent with Lizzie Fletcher. On the Republican side, Wesley Hunt was able to perform well enough to not need a runoff, so that's going to be the general election matchup. The 10th Congressional District is a lean for the Republicans. They have the incumbent with Michael McCall. On the Democrat side, going to be going to a runoff with Mike Siegel, having the likely edge in that one. He's about 11 percentage points ahead of the second place finisher, Pritesh Gandhi. So we'll see how that runoff plays out, and the challenger there will go up against the incumbent Republican. The 21st Congressional District is a lean for the Republicans, incumbency advantage with Chip Roy. Wendy Davis did extremely well in her primary, picking that one up with over 84,000 votes. The 22nd Congressional District is an open Republican seat, so there's not an incumbent on either side. And this one is likely to be a true toss-up scenario. On the Democrat side, you have Sri Kulkarni, who was able to just get past that 50 percentage point threshold to not need a runoff, whereas on the Republican side, it looks like Troy Nehls will have the clear edge going into that runoff, as he was able to double up the person who finished in second place. The 23rd Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats. It's actually an open Republican seat. And on the Democrat side, Gina Jones having quite a bit of success, going on and picking up over 66% of the vote. On the Republican side, going to a runoff between Gonzalez and Reyes, and it looks like they could potentially have a pretty competitive runoff race to go to. The 24th Congressional District also vacated open Republican seat, likely in that true toss-up scenario. And I don't know if I mentioned this with the 23rd Congressional District, but it's actually a lean towards the Democrats, even though it is an open Republican seat. This is an area that's been trending very favorably towards the Democrats. That 24th Congressional District, open Republican seat in a true toss-up scenario. We have a runoff going on the Democrat side between Kim Olson and Candace Valenzuela. It looks like Olson will have the edge going into that one, with Beth Van Doon going on and winning by enough to pick it up without needing to go to a runoff. And then the 31st Congressional District is a lean for the Republicans. They have the incumbency advantage with John Carter. He cleaned up, getting over 82% of the vote. And then a runoff on the Democrat side between Christine Mann and Don Imam. And it looks like that one is going to likely be pretty competitive going to the runoff. In the 32nd Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats. They have the incumbent with Colin Allred, and then on the Republican side, Genevieve Collins, just able to get over the threshold needed to not need a runoff, so that will be the general election matchup there. So now heading over to California, and again, it is worth noting that a lot of the vote for California is still out in those mail-in ballots, so these numbers will continue to tally up over the course of this next week. So these aren't set in stone by any means. A number of them have been decided, but also a number of them still haven't been decided. So we'll see how those numbers look as I run through these competitive districts. Starting off here with California's 7th Congressional District. This one is likely for the Democrats to continue to keep this one with their incumbent, Amy Barra. Buzz Patterson, the GOP challenger here, and you can see how they're relatively competitive here in this jungle primary. But it also is worth noting that that mail-in ballot tends to be more favorable towards the Democrats. So if we see things relatively close to the Democrat having a lead, the mail-in ballots are likely to push them to a larger margin of victory as those votes continue to come in and be tallied. The 10th Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats. They have the incumbent with Josh Harder, who right now is sitting at a pretty close margin there with GOP challenger Ted Housey. And this is a perfect example of this. So you can see that 3 out of the top 4 individuals were from the GOP. And if you just take their numbers and add them together right now, it's actually quite a bit more than the incumbent Democrat. But again, with those mail-in ballots coming in, I'd be surprised if Harder wasn't able to build a bit more of a margin between himself and the rest of these Republicans who challenged him in this jungle primary. The 12th Congressional District, this one is safe for the Democrats, but one that I wanted to point out because it's actually going to be a Democrat versus a Democrat heading towards the general election in San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi clearly has a massive edge. She has all the money she could ever want to spend in this race. She has overwhelming name recognition. She's the leader of the Democrats in the House, but she is going to be challenged on the left by Shahid Buttar, who was able to get enough vote to be the opponent to Pelosi in that general election matchup. So Buttar, a long shot to go on and have anything in the way of being competitive with Pelosi, but one that I'm going going to keep an eye on the general election day just to see what he is able to do in terms of that margin of victory that Pelosi is going to have and whether he's able to keep this one respectable or not. The 21st Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats with T.J. Cox, the incumbent. This is a district that has a ton of mail-in ballots that come in later. We saw this back in the 2018 midterms. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they actually called this one for the GOP on Election Day, but then as those mail-in ballots continued to come in, T.J. Cox went on and actually won it at the end of the day. So we'll see what happens in the 21st District as we head towards the general election, being challenged there. In this jungle primary, the GOP, David Valadao actually having the most votes at this point in time. We'll see how things close as those ballots continue to come in. The 22nd Congressional District is likely for the Republicans. They have the incumbent advantage with Devin Nunes, and he's going to be challenged here most likely by Phil Arbajo, who has a bit of a gap between himself and the rest of the pack in this jungle primary. The 39th Congressional District is a lean for the Democrats. They have the incumbent with Gil Cisneros being challenged here by the GOP, Young Kim. And it looks like that vote right now is pretty competitive between the individuals, with the GOP currently sitting at a higher number. The 45th Congressional District is also a lean for the Democrats. They have the incumbent with Katie Porter. She's doing pretty well for herself in this instance, with the GOP having some competitive race here behind her. It looks like Greg Raths has the inside lane to potentially being the challenger to Katie Porter in the general election. And then the 48th Congressional District is also a lean towards the Democrats with the incumbent Harley Rhoda, and Michelle Steele looks like she's going to be challenging Rhoda in that general election. And a lot of these districts that I'm running through in 2018 were flipped from the Republicans to the Democrats, so that's why you have a lot of these incumbent Democrats that it's just a lean towards them in what's likely to be pretty competitive races. The 49th Congressional District is likely for the Democrats. They have the incumbent Mike Levin, and it was unopposed in that jungle primary. And then the 50th Congressional District is likely for the Republicans. We had an extremely close race in the 2018 midterms between Amar Campa-Najjar and Duncan Hunter, who went on and won it, but it is now an open Republican seat. Pretty competitive primary there between Daryl Issa and Carl DeMaio. It looks like Issa might be the challenger here to Campa-Najjar. We'll see how this one plays out as more of that vote comes in. And like I said, likely to be in Republican hands, but Campa-Najjar made things respectable in 2018, and maybe it's a very close race again here in 2020. And then the 53rd Congressional District is safe for the Democrats, but there is a Justice Democrat running in this one, so I thought I'd point it out with Georgette Gomez, looking like she's going to finish in the top two, and it looks like it could potentially be a Democrat versus a Democrat running in this safe Democratic district, with Justice Democrat Progressive challenging Sarah Jacobs there for this seat. And those are all the congressional districts that I wanted to run through in this video. I appreciate you guys stopping by for more election coverage. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, and I hope to see you back here next time.